Hey everybody. It's been about 5 years since my last video, and in that time I've been doing digital artwork as usual. Nothing new there, so there's kind of no reason to create new videos. But recently I found myself living out of a hotel due to some home renovations, and it was taking longer than I thought. And in that time I haven't been able to get to my computer as much. So I've decided to take up a new form of art. I've been doing oil pastels, which is a traditional form, and been having a lot of fun with it. And you can see up here a couple of practice images I've done, or smaller images I've been working on. However, I've just finished my first big project, which I haven't given this one a title yet. I'm working on that still, but the image is done, and along the way I created a video log of what I was doing. So we're going to jump back in time to the beginning, and you can follow my process. Now, this isn't necessarily meant to be educational, but if you're an artist, you might be able to pick up a few tips here and there. So let's get started. So a quick word about materials. I'm going to be using an 18 by 24 inch sheet of sanded paper. It's a 600 grit, archival quality, acid-free, all that stuff. For most of the artwork, I'm going to be using Sennelier oil pastels. However, for some of the detail work, I'll be using Faber Castell polychromos. Alright, so the point of all these materials is everything is professional quality. I'm making this artwork with collectors in mind. So I've got the acid-free archival paper that should last centuries without degrading. The Sennelier oil pastels are light fast and should also last just as long. And the polychromos are oil-based colored pencils, so keeping the binder the same as the pastels. So the idea is everything should last a long time. Now, I've secured my paper here to my board with some artist tape, and this is to create a half-inch margin all the way around. That'll allow me to handle the paper without smudging the finished product. It will also allow framers to add matting and framing without the oil pastels coming in contact with the mats and the frames. Also, being taped down to my board like this, it's going to hold this paper flat, as the oil pastels make just about anything I've ever tried to work on warp and curl, so this will prevent that. Alright, so I've finished my initial sketch here. What I did was I used my polychromos colored pencils to actually do the sketch, so that this girl will have a blue dress, so I did it in blue, brownish dragon, green for the moss and such. This is mostly to make it so that the oil pastels don't pick up weird colors. They're going to be roughly the same as the object that I'm coloring. So I spent about 3 hours working on the oil pastel part of this artwork. You can see here I started with the background. This comes from my art education, where I first learned how to oil paint, and you always painted from the back to the front. You don't really need to do that as much with oil pastels, but I'm still in the habit of doing that. So to kick it off, I wanted to sort of the background that faded into the forest. So I covered the whole thing in white, the white oil pastel, blended in some lightish yellow, pale yellow for the sun, and a sort of a grayish green for the forest area behind here. And then I blended in some darker lines to represent some trees in the background. Did all my blending using a blending stump, which is one of these. I don't like to actually I don't like to blend with my fingers for several reasons. First of all, your yellows might have cadmium in them and your whites might have lead in them, so toxic substances, I want to keep them off my fingers. The surface is a sandpaper, so that would be rough on blending with your fingers as well. And also, I don't want to be washing my hands every few minutes where I change areas where I want to blend. So I use blending stumps for all my blending. So for this last session, I mostly spent this time working on this tree here. I added a bit more detail to it, really using just the same colors I had used in the background. Made it a bit darker though, so that it would kind of stand out in the foreground. Coming down here, added some just dark filler between between the girl and the dragon. Also just kind of added a little bit more detail over here on this other side of the dragon. So it doesn't look like I did much, but the detail on this tree is going to kind of bring it out. This one here I'm probably going to make a whole lot darker because it's really just going to be in the foreground to kind of act as an outline behind this girl here, and to sort of frame the dragon between these two trees over here. All right, so I'm currently working on this dark area here along the bottom. It's really a dark green, but almost black. And in this case, I'm actually going to be working on this tree here, which is going to be essentially black for the purpose of this image. But I wanted to make a point here. I rarely use a black oil pastel. This is actually just sort of an intense dark green. What I'm going to do, kind of fill in that area with that, and then I'm going to go over it with also kind of an equally intense red. And then when I take the blending stump and blend those two together, I'm going to get a color that's basically black, but it's a little bit richer than what you'd get if you'd use the black oil pastel. Gives it a bit more depth, and it doesn't have that kind of super flat look that sort of sucks all the light in around it. So it's really, I guess, really a super dark brown, but it works, great as black. And now I'm going to go over it a few times with the green and red here, again and again, and it's just going to get darker and darker until it's really visually, looks like, well, black. All right, so pretty much got the background in now. All these kind of darkish areas here, got it to where I like it. Got this nice foreground tree that I've added in. Put a little bit more detail into it than I thought I would. Originally, it was just going to be all one big dark streak, but there is some texture in there. Now, I've also started in on the dragon's face here. Now you can see this is a lot more detailed than the background. So I've wound up using the polychromos a lot for this. Now, when I do this kind of stuff, I usually cover it first with oil pastels and then come and cut in the details with the colored pencils. And of course, this one's getting pretty dull now, but I try to keep them razor sharp when I do this. So I've spent a few nights now working on this details of the dragon's head here. So this is generally my same pattern of first laying down sort of a broader color with an oil pastel, and then coming back in and kind of cutting in details with really, really sharp the polychromos colored pencils. So in some ways it's like scraping the pastel back up with that colored pencil, so to kind of lay down sort of these details in between. So anyway, it's taken me a couple of days to kind of get to this point, and it'll probably take me another week or so to finish this dragon. So it's been a few days and I pretty much have the dragon where I want him. I've got this nice sort of detailed area for his neck and head that contrasts really well with the background, and then where I want it not to stand out quite so much, the details get a little bit looser, gets more impressionistic, and then kind of fades more into the background. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy with the way he's turned out, and it looks like I'll be moving on to the girl down here for the next few days. All right, so I've spent a couple more nights working on this image. So basically all of those nights have been working on the image of this girl here. I started with her face and then added the hair. Spent a good deal of time trying to get that hair right. The dress kind of happened pretty quickly. I decided to use this sort of more of a bluish green color to make her stand out a little bit more from the background. However, to tie her kind of back into the scene, I added these sort of orange flowers, which are this sort of a similar echo of the orange-ish scales in the dragon. So it kind of ties the image together pretty well. So getting pretty close to done with this. I'm looking forward to finishing this up on the foreground here, which is going to be mostly kind of more greenery type stuff. So that'll be my next update. So I've finished this one up. Spent a few days adding this foreground here, which is just sort of a kind of a dirty path that the girl is standing on, and just sort of a mossy mass over here. Try to keep it less detailed, so the focus of details would still be on your major characters here. I'm going to give this a few days to harden up. Now, oil pastels never totally dry, but they will kind of harden a bit when exposed to air. And then I'm going to hit it with a few coats of this Sennelier fixative, which is specifically made for oil pastels. So That'll make it so it's safe to ship and safe to display, really. If whoever buys it doesn't want to put it under glass, it'd be perfectly fine not to do that. Also, I want to point out that I've kind of hid my signature down here at the bottom, but signing is sort of the last thing I do to sort of call it done. So that pretty much wraps this one up. In a day or two, I'll post this up to my print account. So if anybody's interested in ordering prints, or if they're even interested in inquiring about the original, I'll have a link for that below in the description. So thanks everybody, and good night.